So I recently rewatched the Indiana Jones original trilogy as I kind of wanted to revisit these films since recently The Dial of Destiny has been coming out and a lot of people have been talking about Indiana Jones. And upon watching this series, I have a greater appreciation of these films, and I really still like these films, and I see them as classics. So in today's video, I wanted to kind of give my overall opinion of all three of these films, talking about them and kind of their story, their characters, the action that's within, and kind of give you guys my concluding thoughts on these films. Now, I want to talk about the first three that came out in the 80s, and not the subsequent Indiana Jones 4 and 5, Kingdom of Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny, because I haven't seen Dial of Destiny yet, and I'm not really that interested in talking about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I feel like the first three, the trilogy, are the definitive Indiana Jones films, and I just want to talk about those films and give you guys my opinion. Now, starting off, the story of these movies really has the Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Last Crusade are pretty much the same, kind of, in the plots, and Temple of Doom is kind of the unique, odd one out, kind of the black sheep one. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, its story is considered the best of the series, and it's usually everybody's favorite for being the first one. And I like it a lot too, but I also see that The Last Crusade is very much similar in its plot, and I really love the story that's within The Last Crusade a little bit more than I do with the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So in both films, they start off with Indiana Jones finding some sort of obscure ancient artifact and acquiring it, and then it cuts back to him at his college being a professor, and he's given a mission. So in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, he's approached by some agents from the U.S. government who are given the mission of finding the lost Ark of the Covenant before the Nazis do, because they're trying to obtain the Ark and gain world domination. In the Last Crusade, on the other hand, is that Indiana Jones is approached by some American entrepreneur, some American businessman, and he is telling him that the Nazis are going after the Holy Grail. They're trying to seek after the Holy Grail, and Indiana Jones has to get into contact and rescue his father, who has been seeking the Holy Grail for most of his life. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, he has to seek after and rescue Marion Ravenwood, who is his love interest in the film, as she also possesses an amulet that will point to the correct location of the Lost Ark of the Covenant. In both films, they have to go after the sacred artifact before the Nazis do, and in comes all these cool action scenes and all this stuff. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, we get some cool scenes of them in Egypt getting the Ark of the Covenant, and then the Nazis getting it, and then the ending of the movie concluding where the Nazis opening up the Ark of the Covenant. In Last Crusade, it's sort of the same thing. They have to fight to get to the location of the Holy Grail, and we learn what happens in the end of that film. Now, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, watching it for the first time in several years, I'm kind of amazed that the movie after 10 years it's a lot shorter than I remember, because I remember when I first saw it, I remember there were so many elements of it that kind of lengthened it out. Now looking back on it, I'm actually surprised that the movie is very tightly well made and very well paced, because it actually feels like, of all three of the films, Raiders of the Lost Ark feels like the shortest film out of all of them. And The Last Crusade, actually being somewhat of a copy of the first film in many of its plot and its structure of the story, I feel that it's actually the longest film of the series, as it has additional elements within the film and the story. Now, Temple of Doom, though, is the odd one out, and this is the film that has gotten a lot of criticism, and a lot of people dislike it within the trilogy because of its dark story. Now, in this film, we see Indiana Jones starting off a mission of actually obtaining obscure artifact like in Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, but he's in Shanghai, China, and he's up against these mobsters, and he has to escape with the sidekicks to India, where his plane crashes, and he stumbles upon learning about this death cult that is trying to obtain these mystical stones, as they have these intentions of actually using these stones to, again, like the villains in the other films, have world domination, conquer the world with these stones and destroy all religions and be supreme and stuff. What's so distinct from that movie from the other ones is that in the Temple of Doom, the way the story goes is that actually Indiana Jones sort of just stumbles upon this sort of village and area in India where he learns about these mystical stones, and he sort of is thrusted into this adventure, whereas in the other films he sort of has to kind of be provide this mission, and he has to seek out and rescue specific people who will help him with actually obtaining that specific ancient artifact. In Temple of Doom, it's really different, and the story is also kind of differently structured as well, in the sense, like I said, there's a lot more darker themes. It goes down a route of like dealing with cults, and I understand a lot of people criticizing that film for those elements, and that film actually deviating from the course from like Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. But to be honest with you, the way that story is structured, how dark it is, makes it a lot more memorable to me than the other films, because with Raiders of the Lost Ark, it being the first establishing movie and how great it is, I like it a lot, but at the same time, I see it as the same thing with Last Crusade. They wanted to go down a safe route, and they tried with Temple of Doom actually being a little bit different, introducing darker elements, and with that, it got a lot of criticism and backlash for that. And I think that Temple of Doom took a lot of risks, and it was very much different in the way that it was structured as a story, and it suffered for that. But I see that as a very much a unique and an advantage to the film, and makes it very unique in my opinion with the story. Here, it's mystical rocks that they have to go after. They're going up against villains who are trying to conquer the world, but that are not Nazis. In both Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade, it's a race against time up against the Nazis again. And The Last Crusade is really my kind of favorite Indiana Jones film, kind of, because of how rewatchable it is as a movie. But I think it is obvious that the story is sort of a rehashed version, an extended version of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, going into the action, I think that with Raiders of the Lost Ark being very well paced and very tight film, there's actually only a very few memorable action scenes that are within that movie that I kind of remember a lot. The most action-packed movie of the trilogy, I feel, is The Last Crusade. There's a lot more scenes, a lot more action scenes where he's with his sidekicks, he's with his side characters kind of going up against the Nazis. There's a great scene where he's fighting up, Indiana Jones is fighting up against German aircraft, he's fighting up against motorcycle Nazis, and he's up against, like, he's in boat chase. And of course, the final scene of the film, which is really one of my favorite final action scenes, is when he's fighting up against a tank. That's actually one of the best action scenes throughout the whole series. I absolutely loved it, even though with Raiders of the Lost Ark, it has a really great truck scene, a truck action scene where Indiana Jones is trying to capture the Ark from the Nazis. Temple of Doom, in a way, is, I think it's also great, the setting that it is within India, and the kind of minecart scene that there is within the film is very fun. I love that action scene, and how it leads up to the scene where they're on the rope bridge, which is wonderfully made, and I love it how really unique that scene is, and it always sticks out in my mind of how it kind of, they pulled it off, and how cool it was, and really it's just memorable in so many ways. But of all these films, I think what I could say is that The Last Crusade really is the best film for the action scenes, if you really want something fun to watch, really packed and stuff. Whereas Raiders of the Lost Ark is fantastic in how well paced it is, and how really there's great writing and everything about it. I still feel that The Last Crusade is more fun to watch, because in the end, Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade are the most rewatchable films for me, because of the memorable action scenes that are within those movies. Now, moving on to the characters, I think that with these movies, you have an assortment of kind of replaceable sidekick characters that are throughout these films that are kind of memorable in their own right. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, we have like Marion Ravenwood, which Indiana Jones has to team up in the search for the Ark of the Covenant. In Temple of Doom, he teams up with Short Round. I forgot the actor. Yeah, the actor actually got famous recently for winning an Oscar, and he also has to team up with this love interest, Willie Scott. And in The Last Crusade, we see of all three of the films, the best team up is with Indiana Jones and his father, played by Sean Connery. In The Last Crusade, I really think that the character of Henry Jones is really possibly one of the best side characters. The interactions between those two characters is some of the best stuff. Some of the funniest scenes are with them when they're talking and interacting, and when Indiana Jones has to rescue his father and he has to get him out of there, and he's like, I gotta rescue you, and we gotta find the Holy Grail, and Indiana Jones's father is criticizing him, and he's also complaining a lot. And I absolutely love the dynamic within that film. I think that of all the other films, while the side characters are really interesting and great in those movies, I think you can't really beat Sean Connery as Indiana Jones's father. The kind of chemistry that they have, the father-son moments within those films, really choked me up. And also, like I stated, so many scenes that I laugh within that movie. I'm so impressed with the fact that they casted Sean Connery in that film, because he was perfect for that role, and he was perfect as that character within the Indiana Jones trilogy. Then you have with Temple of Doom, I liked Short Round as a character, as a kind of small child character, but there's really not much I can kind of say more about the child actor of Short Round, the actor who played Short Round at the time. I mean, he's a child actor, and I understood that as you go into the story and you see him helping out Indiana Jones, really he's a child actor helping out Indiana Jones. It's fun to watch with him, but at the same time, he's not the best side character of the series. Then you have Willie Scott. Now, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he teams up with Marion Ravenwood and also Saul, who is in Cairo, Egypt. He helps him out. But the main side character that's helping Indiana Jones throughout Raiders of the Lost Ark is Marion Ravenwood. And she's seen as this tough maverick, very much tough as nails, be independent, kind of work on her own, that teams up with Indiana Jones. And a lot of people like her as a character, as a maverick. But here's the thing. I kind of find Willie Scott's character a little bit more interesting. And the reason why I find her a little bit more interesting is because she comes off as this annoying, complaining woman who's forced into this adventure. She has to kind of react to the situation that she's in. And I kind of like that. Marion Ravenwood is your typical tough chick who goes on this adventure. She knows how to handle herself, yada, yada, yada. She's the female version of Indiana Jones. And while that's interesting to me in some ways, I think that I've seen that before, and I kind of don't find the character that much more interesting, and I can't really say that much more, add any more details about her, other than the fact that she's an independent woman. Whereas like Willie Scott, I feel is a relatable character, because she's kind of thrusted into this adventure within Temple of Doom. Again, he kind of stumbles upon this cult in India, and he's trying to get back to Delhi, Indiana Jones, and he's thrust into this position where he has to deal with these evil cult members, and Willie Scott has to tag along to survive. And I thought the way that she's reacting to these situations is somewhat interesting, in the sense of it's like it feels a lot more realistic. It feels like, yeah, of course this person who's never been in this environment before is going to be reacting that way. And that's what I like kind of about Willie Scott. A lot of people have criticized her because compared to Marion Ravenwood, she's not this independent, strong-willed woman. She's sort of this whiny, high-maintenance, uptight woman who really is difficult to deal with for Indiana Jones. But I don't know, I always kind of liked her as a character. I think that, she feels real to me in that sense. Whereas like Marion Ravenwood, she's okay, she's fine as an actress. The actress who's playing her feels fine. I don't know, she's okay. But on the other stand, Willie Scott feels like a real character if they were placed into that environment, into that situation. I don't know why, but that feels interesting to me. And that's something that I have to give props to for Temple of Doom, is that it is a departure from Raiders and from The Last Crusade in the type of characters that they put into this film. Now, when it comes to the villains of these movies, I think that this is not the weakest part, but this is the most underwhelming aspect of the Indiana Jones series, is that you have these villains who are evil and just want to pursue some ancient artifact to gain world domination. In Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, we have the Nazis who are being helped by these archaeologists, these businessmen who see the benefit of working with the Nazis to obtain some sort of artifact to gain a legacy or to live forever or to gain power. And that's about it that I could say. For example, Belloc, who's a French archaeologist, doesn't really care that he's selling himself out for the Nazis to obtain the Ark of the Covenant. And as a villain, I thought he was okay. He was fine. That's all I could kind of say about him. He's fine. Donovan in the Last Crusade is a lot more of a boring villain. Like, I don't really care about this person. I don't really care that they sold themselves out to the Nazis. They're like, yeah, I just want to obtain the Holy Grail so I can live forever. It's like, okay, but that's in my mind all right, because again, this series is about Indiana Jones going on an adventure, trying to get an ancient artifact and preventing evildoers from conquering the world, and that's okay with me. And I think that in a sense, those two characters, Belloc and Donovan, being boring and not really that interesting to me is okay. Now with Temple of Doom, the thing with the main villain in that movie, the kind of guy who's doing the sacrifices, who's ripping people's hearts out, I love the fact that he is so distinct from all the villains. villains. Here, he's this cult leader. He wants to bring about the world domination through, bring about his religion and conquering everybody. And he's this intimidating force compared to the other villains, Bellica, Donovan, and even the Nazi characters. I feel like he's the scariest villain that's in the series for obvious reasons. Like, he tears a dude's heart out, which is flipping awesome. It's like, whoa, that's cool. All right. And I always liked the villain because, I mean, again, he is a legitimate threat and he's scary as an individual. Whereas with the Nazis, yeah, they're scary on their own as what they are. They're Nazis. But as characters, that's all I can kind of describe them as. They're Nazis, and that's about it. And they're there to, try to rule the world and stuff. Whereas like with Temple of Doom, with the villain in that movie, yeah, he also has the same goals as the Nazis, but I always feel like there's a little bit more to it. There's a little bit more depth to that character because he's this ancient mystical kind of cult member, and he really is so obsessed with conquering the world and spreading his religion and his cult. I don't know, there's always something about that character that is so fascinating to me. But yeah, I think that he is the best villain of this series, whereas the other villains, they're kind of lame and boring. Now, in my conclusion, I feel like, these films are really fantastic. I could go on for so much longer talking about the benefits of each film and other kind of details. But to kind of sum it up, I think that the best film of this series that I love rewatching, even though a lot of people feel differently, is The Last Crusade. The Last Crusade has some of the best action scenes. The Last Crusade has the best duo, the best kind of team up that we see in the series. It has some of the best acting. And it also feels like it's the most fun movie to watch. And yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark is great. It's absolutely fantastic, and I'm glad it's the starting point of the series. But with that said, I feel like The Last Crusade, there's so many more memorable moments within that movie than Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I don't know, it's just when I was watching that movie, and at the end when they're riding off into the sunset, and Sean Connery and Indiana Jones, they're talking back and forth, and they're having some fun dialogue. It got me choked up a little bit, to be honest with you, because it is a definitive conclusion for the series. And that's what I love about it, is that you see throughout the film the development of their father-son relationship is the core of this movie and what makes it so great and rewatchable. And I can't even say more of that. I think that sunset scene really was so great, and you hear the Indiana Jones theme come up, and it's the end of the series, and it's such a lovely ending. And that's why I have to say that The Last Crusade is possibly my favorite movie of the Indiana Jones trilogy, is because of the relationship that Indiana Jones has with his father, and it's so fantastic to watch on screen. And I think those elements that are within that movie are great. Raiders of the Lost Ark is fantastic for establishing it. I think that the movie really has some great bits within the film, and it's great that it's actually it feels very short and very satisfying. Temple of Doom, I think, also is very great, even though that people have criticized it for its dark themes. I think it's fantastic for departing from the other two films. But I have to say, Last Crusade would be like my number one Indiana Jones film. And number two, I would maybe say, is Raiders of the Lost Ark, because I feel like most people wouldn't like it if I put like Temple of Doom above Raiders of the Lost Ark. But the thing is look, I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is great, but I also love Temple of Doom. I know a lot of people don't like that movie, and a lot of people criticize it a lot, but I actually do like it a lot. And I think that the action scenes within that movie are just spectacular, and the writing is fun, and there's so many good elements within that movie, even though that it's dealing with a dark subject in that film. I mean, there's like child slavery that's within that movie, that Indiana Jones has to save these child slaves from being indoctrinated and being possessed by demonic forces. Yeah, it got crazy, but I like that. So yeah, I would say that would be my way that I would sort it out. It would be Last Crusade, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then would be Temple of Doom. So yeah, I absolutely love rewatching this series. It's very much a rewatchable series, and I absolutely love Harrison Ford, and I love Sean Connery. He's a fantastic actor. I think he was the best to be casted in that role within that movie. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of my video, of my rant, talking about reviewing each one of these films and kind of summing them up in this sort of short video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comment section down below, what order would you place those movies, Indiana Jones movies in. What is your favorite Indiana Jones film? Is it Last Crusade? Is it Raiders? Shoot, is it even Temple of Doom? Let me know in the comment section down below. I appreciate you guys watching this video. It was fun kind of watching these series and kind of revisiting them and looking into the characters and watching the performances on screen. It was fantastic. So thank you for watching this video, and like always, have a wonderful day.